Hello everyone, Max is here. Welcome to my very overdue Shield and Sword discussion video. The first thing I actually want to say is the overworld encounters, so the Let's Go Pikachu, Let's Go Eevee encounter system. I love this. Not only do I liked it in Let's Go Eevee, Let's Go Pikachu, and I was kind of hoping we wouldn't get it again because I felt it would be kind of a special thing that only Let's Go Pikachu, Let's Go Eevee had. But considering that this is an open world game, having these giant, just huge areas where there's just basically a blank void of just space, that wouldn't really look too good. And having the Pokemon kind of just roaming around really adds a lot more life and really just makes the region pop a lot more. I'm hoping we get the battle system from the older game, so turn-based battles with wild Pokemon, not the Let's Go Pikachu, Let's Go Eevee battle system, because while I liked some things about Let's Go Eevee, Let's Go Pikachu, I don't like the battle system for wild Pokemon. It's just a catching thing. It's not battling. I like the battles. Dynamaxing, I actually really like this thing. Seems like it's only going to be a Dynamax Pokemon versus another Dynamax Pokemon, so it's not like Mega Evolution where, oh, here's my Mega Starter that just steamrolls literally the entire game. I don't need anything other than, because you can use a Mega anywhere. No, Dynamaxing seems to only be doable in these stadiums, so the places where the gym battles are, and presumably where the champion, the league, is going to be. So I like that. It's also, you don't just get massive stats because, again, it's Dynamax versus Dynamax, so your massive stats kind of cancel out and neutralize each other. Dynamax moves, these are like, apparently this is a normal type, 130 base power move, and it lowers speed. So it's powerful, yes, but it's also balanced. Again, that's something Megas didn't have. They weren't balanced, they were just factually better. This is balanced. I really like this. Now, Gigantamaxing, these seems to be kind of the same thing as Dynamaxing, where instead of having a normal type move with 130 base power, each Pokemon that Gigantamaxes has a different form, but have kind of an exclusive move, which kind of seems like Z moves a bit from the original, from like exclusive Z moves, sort of like how Mimikyu had Let's Snuggle Forever, Pikachu had Catastrophica, things like that. Which I kind of like. Also like the Gigantamax designs. I like because it's not like Mega Evolution where, oh, it's just the same thing, just a little bit bigger, change the little thing here. The Gigantamaxes are, gigantic, and some of them are pretty drastically different. But some are just different enough to say, yeah, that's the same Pokemon. I feel, again, it's like, at risk of saying that Gigantamaxing is, like, saying, same things about Gigantamaxing that I don't like about Mega Evolution, I'm just gonna say, I like how Gigantamaxing is more balanced. It does alter the appearance of certain Pokemon, but it's made in a much more balanced way. The appearance changes are really only because this is a new feature and because they get exclusive new moves, but again, it's exclusive to the Pokemon. You can do them at very limited times. It's not just hit the Dynamax Gigantamax button and beat the whole game. Some of the Gigantamax designs I do kind of like. I'm going to be getting into some of those a little bit later. And, well, again, it's kind of similar to the Mega Evolution, having different appearance changes with new stats and everything. This is handled in a much more balanced way. I will be interested to see if Gigantamaxing and Dynamaxing are doable in sort of trainer battles, because it seems like this is something that's going to be kind of limited to just the story mode, unless you kind of specially permit Dynamax and Gigantamaxing. Because, if you're going to do a Dynamax, you kind of have to have your opponent know you're doing a Dynamax or doing a Gigantamax. Which kind of spoils things. I mean, if you knew that your opponent was going to be, Mega Evolving on a turn, you know exactly what's going to happen. So I don't know exactly how this would work out in terms of online battles. Or it's like Gigantamax team versus Dynamax, Gigantamax Dynamax team versus Gigantamax Dynamax team. I have no idea how it'll work. But as it stands right now, this seems to be a direct improvement on the Mega system. I do like how Mega Evolutions and Z moves have kind of been left out, since without Megas to kind of make Z moves make sense, Z moves would kind of just break everything, because it kind of feels like Z moves were made to counter Megas. and, one without the other would kind of just break everything. So the removal of them and kind of replacement with this new system, I'm liking. I also like how every single Pokemon is capable of Dynamaxing, and Gigantamaxing isn't really that different, seemingly. We don't really have all the information on it, so I can't make a definitive statement on this just yet, but it seems like a Gigantamax is kind of just like an exclusive Z move. It's something most every Pokemon can do. Some have this sort of little special thing they can do, but the special little thing they can do really isn't that, when you break it down into mechanics, that different from the thing everything else can do, which I do very much like. Now it's time for my thoughts on the new Pokemon. Starting off, we have probably what is my favorite Pokemon so far, and likely will remain my favorite Pokemon throughout the entirety of Shield and Sword, Duraludon. I freaking love this thing. Steel is my favorite type. Dragon is my second favorite type, and Dialga is one of my favorite Pokemon because that's Steel Dragon typing, and Duraludon is a Steel Dragon. When I first saw this thing, I thought there's no way they're going to make this thing a Steel Dragon. That's going to be something kind of Dialga has on its own. They're never going to do it again. Then I saw Steel Dragon, and I was just over the moon. Heavy Metal and Light Metal for the abilities, I find both as interesting because on one hand, if this thing is a physical attacker, because we saw in the trailer, direct, or whatever it was, it's using Flash Cannon on a Tyranitar, so it might be a special attacker, or maybe mixed. I'm hoping this thing is maybe mixed, because that way you can kind of do both Heavy Slam, if it is heavy enough, of course, that's all permitting, if it is heavy enough to utilize Heavy Metals, boosting effect to actually be able to do more damage with Heavy Slam, or if Light Metal is just going to be the preferred ability because it's such a light Pokemon. Because Duraludon, its name kind of comes from aluminum, from an alloy made of aluminum. So I'm thinking it might be a lighter steel type, so Heavy Slam might not be something it uses particularly well because its weight's going to be a bit higher. Well, okay, its weight's going to be lower, not higher. I am hoping, really hoping, this thing is the pseudo-legendary. Because they showed this thing up against Tyranitar, that makes me think that. Because Komo-o was shown off in, I believe it was Sun and Moon, against Salamence and Garchomp. So I'm hoping that this thing is the pseudo-legendary, because Dragon Steel pseudo-legendary, oh boy, that would be awesome. That would make up for the legendary not being a Dragon Steel type. Well, I can get to that in a bit. Also, the showing off of it fighting Tyranitar. Very clever, Nintendo and Creatures Inc. Very clever with the Godzilla references. At least I hope that's what it was. Dreadnought. This Pokemon, at first, I liked. That, has only stayed the same and actually gotten better as time has gone on. I hope this thing is a regional fossil Pokemon, because I want to see awesome fossil Pokemon, and the fact that it's Gigantamax is basically Gamera, I think is awesome. I mean, I'm much more of a Godzilla fan, but it's still awesome to see a giant turtle monster Pokemon. And this actually goes into what I was saying about Gigantamaxing. I think it's just kind of an aesthetic thing that a few Pokemon get that really isn't much different from Dynamaxing. Again, we'll have to see that more in the future, but I'm really liking this. Its Gigantamax looks awesome. The fact that it's a giant turtle monster is pretty cool. It's water type. It's also part rock, so it makes me think it might be the fossil. Strong Jaws and Shell Armor for its abilities, both really good. I'm a fan of Strong Jaw because I love Tyrantrum, and it's awesome to have that secondary pseudo stab. Shell Armor, really great for blocking crits. Really, really like. Also, I love the pun, Dreadnought. I have a feeling that's based on Dreadnought. I didn't figure that out until too late, and I feel like an idiot for not realizing it. Corviknight. When I first saw this Pokemon, I was like, this thing looks freaking awesome. I hope it is not just Skarmory 2.0. It's Steel Flying. Pressure and Unnerve make me a bit worried that this thing is supposed to be kind of defensive. But then again, we have Pokemon that do have pressure that aren't defensive, like kind of Absol. But still, bit worried. But overall, I think this thing is awesome. Flying Steel. If this thing is basically like an offensive Skarmory, so it's not just a status abuser, It's actually fast, it has a good physical attack stat, but it does have some bulk to take hits like Steel types should. I think this thing is going to be really, really cool. Keeping in mind that Corviknight is apparently a really, really big Pokemon in Galar. It's very, very important, especially there's people there. So I'm thinking this thing is going to be something big. We have seen countless times whenever a Pokemon is, a headliner for a region, a very prominent early revealed Pokemon that's kind of linked with the region, they kind of do buffing the heck out of it, making it great, just because they promoted the heck out of this thing just to make it awesome. I'm hoping Corviknight is awesome, even without all that stuff. And the Gigantamax, this thing looks awesome. Again, it's one of the things I like about Gigantamaxing. It's a slight change in appearance that looks awesome while being just this giant kaiju-esque thing. Really looking forward to this thing. Yamper. As someone who loves dogs, the fact that we have a Pokemon that is literally a dog that fetches a Pokeball, I find that adorable and just clever. The fact that its ability ball fetch, not ball return, it will go and get the first Pokeball that you threw and failed in a battle. That's something that I could definitely say, yeah, a dog would definitely do that. I'm hoping other Pokemon don't get this ability, because I want this to just be an exclusive thing of Yamper just to keep it that adorable. But I'm thinking this thing is pretty cool. It's adorable. Its ability is not the most useful thing in the world, at least for, battling wise, but it's just kind of a cute little thing that shows not every Pokemon has to be a good battler. Not every Pokemon has to be, good for X, status abuse or, just hitting things really hard. There could be Pokemon that just do things that make sense for what a Pokemon would do. We humans and Pokemon coexisting in a world, there naturally probably would be a dog Pokemon that just because it's a dog would go and fetch a Pokeball. I've actually been saying for a long time with some of my friends, why do we not ever have the ability to go pick up a Pokeball after a Pokeball is thrown? It's not like the Pokeball just breaks open and shatters. It just pops open, and we see in the anime, someone throws a Pokeball doesn't catch, the Pokeball goes back to them and they can reuse it. So this actually makes perfect sense. Impidimp, we really have no clue what the heck this thing is yet. It's Dark Fairy, which is an interesting type combination, and I'm going to try to keep my dislike of fairy types a bit low, because I actually have been starting to like them a bit more. I'm interested to see how this is gonna go. My one issue is Fairy Dark kind of covers weaknesses a bit too well, so I'm wondering if this thing is just gonna be a bit of a status user. Maybe Prankster for the ability. We don't know what its ability is yet. All we know is that Assurance, Sucker Punch, and Play Rough. We don't really know what this thing can do yet. So I'll be interested to see what it got. Alcremie, or Alcremie, I don't know how to pronounce this thing's name. The Fairy-type Whipped Cream Pokemon, as I'm calling it. Sweet Veil for its ability, I feel could make this thing pretty interesting, especially for double battle, since it prevents the ally and itself from falling asleep. So, might have some use as a bit of a status user. Again, we don't really know much about this Pokemon yet, and once the stats kind of come out, we'll see a bit more how it does, but not sure what it's going to be doing really, because again, it says it has the little strawberry thing, like Diamond Hard, so I'm wondering if this thing is going to be mixed attacker, or if it's just going to be physical or special. It kind of looks like Slurpuff 2.0, which is actually what I know a lot of people have been calling it, because it kind of, well, is. Also, the Gigantamax, it's a giant freaking cake. I love it. I was laughing when I saw this thing the first time. I just think that was awesome. Roly-Coly. I really like this Pokemon just idea-wise, since, Britain is kind of where the Industrial Revolution began, and coal was kind of what brought that on. So a Pokemon that is essentially a Pokemon made of coal really makes sense. It's a pure rock type, and its name being Roly-Coly is just, it makes so much sense, because it's a wheel that rolls around on its body. It's like a one-wheeled motorcycle kind of thing. That's what I first thought of when I saw it. Steam Engine, which boosts its speed 3 stages when it gets hit by fire or water move. That's really interesting. I'm wondering if it's going to be, say, a fast Pokemon that uses, that maybe uses Steam Engine to just go even faster, or if it's going to be just like a Rock-type Pokemon normally is, kind of slow, high defenses, that Steam Engine kind of compensates for its low speed to make this thing really fast in a way that Rock Polish couldn't dream of, at the cost of taking damage. Which, again, I like it. It's a good trade-off. Heat Proof also seems pretty interesting because it's a rock type. It's not going to be really afraid of fire moves. So having basically a pseudo double fire resistance is actually going to be pretty good. And also a resistance to ice, because ice does damage rock types neutrally. Might be better because it also is a rock type. It's super effective against ice types. It's pretty interesting. I'm going to be interested to see how its stats work out, whether it's going to be... I'm wondering if the thing is going to be fast or if it's going to be slow, because I could see it going either way. Probably, I'm guessing this thing is going to be physically offensive. I don't really see this thing much as a special attacker, but again, it could, because Scald exists, which probably would make sense for this thing to have. But considering New Tackle was the first move we saw it use, I'm expecting that's what it's going to probably be using. Glossifer and Eldegus, I don't know what the names. These things, I'm kind of interested to see how they go, because I hope these things don't just become status users. These don't just become Whimsicott 2.0 or something like that, because that's kind of what I get the vibe of when looking at Eldegus. Its abilities down, Cotton Down and Regenerator. Cotton Down is basically just the same thing as Gudra's Gooey or Alolan Diglett and Dugtrio's Tangling Hair, where contact moves lower speed. So it's not technically a new ability we haven't seen before. It's kind of just a clone of a prior existing ability. I actually was expecting Eldegus to be the first stage and Glossifer to be the second stage or final stage. I was surprised to see it was the other way around. Again, the moves and stats I feel are going to really be the deciding factor on if this thing is interesting or not, because grass types seem to have the most variability when it comes to Pokemon moves, because, again, grass types do status abuse, they do physical, they do special, they kind of just go every which way, mix and match combinations. Seeing as how it was using Leaf Storm and Hyper Voice, I'm thinking this thing is going to be a special attacker. Don't know if it's going to be fast or bulky. Interesting to see how it goes. This is the Pokemon I know a lot of people have been flipping out over, and I really don't care much for it, because it just, to me, looks like the region's generic normal type, Wooloo. I have a feeling this thing is just going to be this game's Rattata, Sentret, Zigzagoon, Bidoof, whatever you may, because it's got Runaway, it's kind of been shown in large numbers. I don't really see this thing as being something other than the region's generic normal type. Probably going to make a lot of people mad about that statement, but my sheep Pokemon will always be Mareep. And now, back to the starters, I know a lot of people have probably been waiting for. My opinions largely are unchanged on these. I still like Grookey. I think this thing is really cool. Seemingly has a signature move in Branch Poke, which I don't know what that does yet. I really like it. It's cute. It reminds me of Chimchar, but just not on fire. I like it. Scorbunny, again, things really haven't changed, on my opinion, with Scorbunny. I really feel that I'm going to need to see the final form and to see what this thing does before I can make any definitive comments on if I like it or if I don't like it. Because one of the things some of my friends have been saying is, what if it becomes an electric fire type that uses Electro Ball and is like a soccer player? Okay, I'd find that pretty interesting. But until we see the final stuff for it, this thing has me worried it's going to be Torchic 2.0, which I don't want, especially considering it has Double Kick that it used, so a bit worried about that. I hope it doesn't turn to Blaziken 2.0, because I don't really like Blaziken that much. And finally, Sobble. I used to say that Sobble was basically Mudkip 2.0, and I still kind of agree with that, but I really want to see what this thing becomes, because I feel the others have very simple typing that they can become. I mean, I'm pretty much expecting Grookey to become maybe Grass Fighting, or maybe just stay pure Grass. Maybe Grass Dark, maybe. That's a big stretch, though. I don't really expect it to do, much in terms of typing. Scorbunny, probably going to go Firefighting, but I doubt that's actually going to happen again. Maybe Fire Electric, but I don't really see where else it could go besides either of those. Sobble, I am very interested to see what Sobble will become. I really want to see this thing, because this has, I feel, the most interesting. It can become so many things, because it's a chameleon. It's like very similar to a chameleon, a water lizard, so maybe it could become like a ghost type to blend in with the surroundings, maybe a poison type. I don't know. Like, again, I don't know, but I really am interested to see what this thing could become. I am very, very eager to see what Sobble becomes. Normally, the fire type is kind of what grabs my attention the most, because fire is kind of a rare typing in regions. But really, it's been anything but the fire type that's grabbed my attention. Really hoping Sobble becomes something interesting. I really look forward to seeing many more Pokemon in Galar. Except for the next two. Well, except for the next one. The sword one. That's what I'm just calling it. I don't like this thing. Okay? Why? Why is a Pokemon that is a wolf's whole thing the fact that it holds a sword in its mouth? This is the most anime Pokemon has ever gotten, and after Ash Greninja, that is saying something. I really don't want to say this, but this design feels lazy. I don't like it. It's a Pokemon that just uses a sword. Why is a Pokemon that is in the game that is a sword not using its claws? Or, I don't know, a dragon. Going off of Smaug from the Hobbit movies, my teeth are swords, my claws spears. Why couldn't they have made the sword legendary something like a dragon that has, giant claws or teeth? Or like a blade tail? Why couldn't they have done that? Not sword in its mouth Pokemon. The other one, the shield one, Zamazenta, I think that's how you pronounce it. I don't did this one as much, because I feel the shield makes a lot more sense, because when I actually first saw this thing, it reminded me a lot more of a lion than really a wolf, which, I mean, they're both wolves, and yes, I do see they're wolves now, but I honestly thought it was a lion when I first saw it, and I actually really like the design. The way they kind of incorporate the shield to kind of look a bit like just hardened metallic fur, I like that. It makes sense. But my issue is not just with Zacian, I don't know how to pronounce it, the sword one. It's that these two are so similar in appearance-wise. Yes, I can tell the difference between them easily. One is much darker in colors than the other. One has the more metallic, shield thing over its whole body. The other one has like these wings and the sword in its mouth. But even then, when I first saw them, I just thought they looked way too similar. Coming off Solgaleo and Lunala, two of the strongest designed legendary Pokemon, so they were interesting. Yes, they were somewhat simplistic in terms of overall body structure and everything like that, but they were very interestingly designed. Their designs were interesting. Even going back to Gen 1, for as bad as some of the Gen 1 designs were, despite the first trio of legendaries being 3 birds, they all were very distinct. Moltres had its wings were on fire, Articuno's were, blue and, icy in its tail. They all looked very different. Zapdos was basically just always flying. They looked very distinct. Even in Gen 1, there were 2 Pokemon where one was a clone of the other, and they were distinct. I'm not overly fond of this way. Even Latios and Latias, which one is just a blue or red recolor of the other, at least that was a prominent difference. Also, it kind of looked like Latios' nose is a bit more sharp, but again, that's also a bit of a harder detail to notice. But even still, they were very distinct. No one would really say Zekrom, Reshiram, Dialga, Palkia, Giratina, Kyurem, any of those dragons all look similar. They're very distinct. These two, yes, the shield and the sword really differentiate them, but outside of that, not really. They look very samey, and I'm not that fond of it. I really hope the sort of trio master, like the third Pokemon in this legendary trio, is not another wolf. It's something more interesting. As we saw from the Direct, they went, back to back when something came, showing that there was some sort of greater threatening presence. So I'm wondering if maybe these two things are rivals, but a greater common foe, which is the Trio Master or something like that, kind of brings them together as allies, uneasy allies, like enemy of my enemy is my friend type sort of deal. But again, we're going to have to see when the game comes out. I am very interested in seeing what happens later. I just don't like the sword legendary. I don't like it. It's one of the few Pokemon I can legitimately say is a bad design, honestly. I don't like it. I don't like how the Pokemon is carrying a sword. It doesn't look right. Chairman Rose, this guy also, he endorses Leon, of course, the champion, and he's also the chairman of the Pokemon League. So he is going to be somewhat of an important character, and I do wonder if he's maybe going to be some kind of commentator on the battles, because he kind of looks like he's someone who'd be watching from the stands and commenting, because he's an endorser for the champion. So yeah, he naturally seems like he's going to be a pretty big name guy in the grand scheme of the game. The leaders, the next thing I'm going to talk about. I love these designs. They look very fitting and interesting. You see, I don't know how to pronounce the name, the fighting type one, Bia, I think that's her name. I'm not good with names. And Nessa, they are both kind of more sporty appearance-wise because the types they use make more sense. Nessa, water types, swimming, that makes more sense. Bia, fighting types, that makes sense. The designs that Alistair and Babyface McBeefy Boy, aka Milo, have make more sense for their types. That they're using, a ghost type and a grass type. Makes more sense. I like the design of them. They're not over-designed, but they look nice and make sense for what types they are using. Commenting also on Alistair and Bia, this is the first time we actually are having different gyms in the game. I know that in Black and White, we had Iris and Drayden, who both were in the Opelousas City gyms. But with them, they were using Dragon Pokemon. They were using the same teams, Haxorus, Druddigon, and Fraxier. The only difference is being Iris' team was all female, Drayden's team was all male, and their abilities were swapped. That's really not a different gym. Here, Alistair uses ghost types, and Bia uses fighting types. That is different. That is a very big difference, and I like that. Now, Leon's a character I'm kind of mixed on, at least right now, because, at least from when I first saw him, all I could think of this guy was he's kind of just knockoff Lance. Since he's got a dragon type, he's got, the champion of the region, and, okay, not a dragon type, he has Charizard, which is a dragon-esque Pokemon. He's in England, of all Pokemon regions, and I'm presuming he's going to have more dragon-like Pokemon since he has the cape. A lot of dragon-type trainers have capes. And again, he's the champion. Don't really think much more needs to be said. I'm hoping he's not just discount or knockoff Lance, because I want this guy to be interesting and I want to like this guy. But I do like how he is directly endorsing you as more or less one of the driving forces, apparently, behind you starting your journey. A lot of the time when we see a champion, they are appearing to you later in the, okay, not later on in the game, but after you have, say, beaten the first gym, maybe the first few gyms, you then encounter the champion, and they don't always say, oh yeah, I'm the champion. If you beat all the gym leaders, you're gonna come and fight me. Pretty much none of them ever say that, but it's fairly obvious they're the champion. And it seems like he's going to directly say, yes, that he is the champion. It's well known he's the champion, and he is directly involved in you and his younger brother Hop's beginning of their journey. And because he is directly endorsing you, that's almost like an invitation to eventually he hopes to battle us, which I very much like. I have never really been a fan of the champion that's just kind of a cardboard cutout to knock over to beat the game. I like it when they take a much more interesting role in the story. It's one of the reasons I like Steven so much. It's one of the reasons I like Alder so much. It's one of the reasons I actually like Lance from Heart Gold and Soul Silver, because he is directly involved in a couple of things. Yes, he kind of only appears for the Team Rocket HQ in Mahogany Town, but he still does something to help you. I'm hoping Leon is going to be the same way. He's interesting, he interacts with you a lot, he is going to be a difficult fight. I very much hope he's going to be a difficult fight. I want this game to be hard. But I do like where they're going with this character, or at least I hope where they're going with this character. The 4-player raid battles, I think, are just such interesting ideas. I mean, I play Pokemon Go, and I am a big fan of it. Raid battles in Go, you're on a clock and everything like that, and you have to battle and beat a very large version of a Pokemon, either legendary or not, and then at the end of it, you get to catch it. I'm thinking that is exactly what this is going to be. You know, you have a Pokemon you have to battle, beat within a certain time limit. Except in Pokemon Go, you have like the fast moves, charge moves. This is going to be turn-based on a timer. A bit similar to in Let's Go Pikachu, Let's Go Eevee, how you had to battle the Snorlax, Moltres, Zapdos, Articuno, and Mewtwo on a time limit. And if you didn't beat them in then, you basically just lost the fight. So I think that's what's going to happen here. Instead of just having a gigantic, Pokemon for no reason, it's going to be it's of course going to be a Dynamax, a Gigantamax, and you can battle with some of your friends to beat it. When you're in raids, you can't just Dynamax, even when you're alone, just at your own will. On turn 1, only player 1 is capable of Dynamaxing, turn 2, player 2, turn 3, player 3, turn 4, player 4, and so on the cycle repeats. Which I kind of actually like that, since you can't have, 4 Dynamax, well, actually technically 3, because Dynamax only lasts like 3 turns apparently, just ganging up on the raid Pokemon all at once. I like that. It's, again, balanced. Raid battles also being online means the same issue of in Pokemon Go, where you just show up at a raid and no one's out there, will not happen. So glad this is going to be online stuff, because one of the worst things in Pokemon Go is just not being able to raid something. I am going to be very interested to see what kinds of Pokemon are raid only. I do think there might be some exclusive raid-only Pokemon. That just is what makes sense to me. And speaking of exclusive Pokemon, or rather sort of kind of branching off that kind of whole thought, there are pseudo-legendaries that are actually exclusive to each game. Goodra and Tyranitar are exclusive in Shield, and Hydreigon and Kommo-o are actually exclusive for Sword. I kind of like this because you have sort of a defensive and offensive legendary in both games. Kommo is much more defensive oriented while it can do some damage, while Hydreigon is just an all-out attacker pretty much. Tyranitar is defensive, but it is much more attack based, and Goodra is basically just all special defense. So that does make sense. The one thing I do kind of like is actually we'll get this about Tyranitar later. But I like how you see Tyranitar kind of walking in the overworld, which makes me think they were either showing off specifically showing off one game, because I know a lot of people, when they first saw Tyranitar walking, are thinking, oh my gosh, Tyranitar's in both games. And not really, it's actually only in one. So I'm wondering if maybe changing it was an afterthought, or perhaps it was intended that way and they just showed Tyranitar off, like, oh yeah, Tyranitar's here. I like that. Now, the last thing I want to address before ending the video is the Pokedex controversy. I'm not going to argue for or against it, or whether Game Freak and Creatures Inc. can or even have the ability to add the full Pokedex, or again, give my opinions on the controversy itself. The only thing I want to comment is that the reactions to this are getting out of hand. People are treating this controversy as something greater than that of the EA's Star Wars Battlefront 2 one, which was objectively a much worse feature in the game. The Pokedex controversy is, again, it's just getting out of hand, and I am very worried about some of the effects this will have. It's just getting out of hand, and that's really all there is to say about this. I'm not going to give my own personal feelings on will I feel they should or shouldn't, or if they can or can't. Just that this is getting a bit out of hand. The EA Battlefront 2 controversy was objectively far worse, and that's really all there is to say. See you guys next time. I actually have no idea what I am doing next, since things have gotten a bit hectic where I am. See you guys then. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and hit the bell notification for more content. Max is here, signing off.